Good morning and welcome to the CEO Breakfast and Strategy Series, co-hosted by the Schneider School of Business and Economics at St. Norbert College. I'm Brian Brees, the president of the college. It's my great delight to welcome you on this beautiful winter day. The sun is shining. We're pulling the curtains so people don't get blinded by the sun. It's great to be in here and have this wonderful warm atmosphere here at the college. Now in the 21st year, the CEO Series provides area executives with opportunities to hear from some of our top CEOs, and today is no different. This resource is being brought to you through the generosity of our presenting sponsor, WPS Health Solutions. Title sponsors are Myron Construction, Johnson Bank, Johnson Insurance, and Insight Publication. And the sponsor for this session today is Davis Keilthau Attorneys. Can we give our sponsors a round of applause for their support? We could not do this series without their support, and at your table are some folders. We encourage you to take that information and review it at your pleasure. It's now my great privilege to ask Father Peter to come forward to offer grace.
I was thinking about a prayer this morning, and I thought, well, we all want a good environment as well, physical as spiritual. So let's pray the prayer of Saint Francis for a good environment. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Lord our God, we ask you to bless our meeting today. We ask you, give us warm hearts and cool minds. We ask you to bless our conversations, our being together. And also, bless us, O Lord, and these your gifts, what we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
It's my great privilege to introduce our speaker, Chris Howald. Christopher is the Chief Executive Officer of Tweet Garot, and in that role, he's responsible for setting strategy, strengthening culture, and overseeing performance. Now, in terms of this overseeing performance piece, if you don't know, they're located just west of campus here, their headquarters, just on the other side of the Crescent. And a couple weeks ago, we had that 60-mile-an-hour wind that was coming through, and a piece of Birder Hall flew off the top and went right through one of their windows. But we're a good neighbor, Chris, so we'll make that right, okay? Prior to joining Tweet Garot, Christopher worked as a corporate counsel at Autodesk, Inc. in San Francisco, associate attorney at the law firm of Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati in New York and Silicon Valley, and served as the law clerk to the Honorable Justice N. Patrick Crooks of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Christopher's well educated. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame, a law degree from Santa Clara University, and an executive MBA from Notre Dame as well. Christopher serves as a trustee for the Mechanical Contractors Association of Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. He's also a member of the board of directors for Brown County United Way, the new community shelter, and the Boys and Girls Club of Green Bay. I've had a chance to get to know Chris in my first year and a half or so. He's really a wonderful leader, and you're going to really enjoy his remarks today. Please welcome Chris Howald.
Before I begin, I want to start by just thanking my friends at St. Norbert's really for hosting the event. This is a great event. Second, for inviting me, and third, for the wonderful breakfast that we had this morning. Brian also thanked our hosts. I want to echo those comments. and really just thank the hosts for investing in the community, right? We have this great platform as a business community to share thoughts, explore new ideas. And so I really just wanted to take a second to thank WPS, Johnson, Insight, our great partners at Myron, and today's sponsors, Davis and Kilthau, for putting on today's event. So if you want, just a quick round of applause. So I've been a pretty consistent attendee at the CEO Breakfast Series for a number of years. I've heard a lot of wonderful speeches from some really excellent leaders. They've been really topical, really great industry-leading kind of thought provocateurs. We've attempted to solve some really big problems. I've learned a lot and really taken a lot from some of those speeches. And as I thought about what I wanted to try to convey today, I was kind of hoping to do something very different. I was hopeful that the look, my mom's already shaking her head. I'm hopeful that the look and feel of today's speech kind of, it feels more like the opening scene of Jerry Maguire, for those of you who can remember, where he's sort of hunched over his computer screen, bearing his soul, more than what you'd find in, say, a traditional TED Talk. I want everyone to, my goal for this morning is for people to leave here understanding how I feel about leadership. I could stand and talk to you about what I think about leadership endlessly, and the team, I think at Tweet Garrett, would really understand what I mean by that, because I often will retreat to the intellectual. That's where I go. That's sort of my defensive behavior, right? Is just to continue to spin and argue and work my way out of things. What I want, hopefully, to convey today is something pretty raw. That's from my heart, that you leave with a sense of maybe, you know, I'm not trying to prescribe anything. I hope that's clear. I don't want to be preachy. I'm hopeful that after listening this morning, maybe you look at a problem differently. Maybe you look at the way that you approach some people on your team differently. Maybe even the way you approach your family differently. And that that my story helps you, some of my struggles help you open your mind to that. So I'm going to just walk through quickly my role as a new CEO, some of the challenges that I faced, what it felt like to really experience failure for the first time, kind of my self-awakening, what that looked like, how I knew it was coming, and then lastly, just my present, how I am purpose-driven in my leadership of Tweet Garrett moving forward. And for those, some of you know me, and it might not seem like that was a big jump, right, from this place of complete unawareness to today. And I just wanted to give you a snapshot, at least from my perspective, of how far I think I've come. 6 or 7 years ago, when I was working as an attorney, I worked a lot, and I took some solace in writing. So I was kind of writing a collection of short stories, somewhat autobiographical. And the title of those short stories was The Treadmill of Discontent. That was a snapshot of my life at the time, right? And today, people ask me, how's work? How are things going? And my response to them is, there's rocky music playing in my head on the way into work. There's rocky music playing in my head while I'm at work. And there's rocky music playing in my head while I leave work. So that jump is what I want to talk about today. And that sort of gives me the framework for the speech this morning. So my self-awareness journey starts in 2016 as a new CEO, replacing my father, who grew the company significantly. And I wanted to kind of create my own legacy. So I literally felt like I was shot out of a cannon. Wanted to re-strategize, wanted to restructure, wanted to put us on a different path, my own path. I think everybody thought that I wanted to change everything down to our logo, branding, mission. It was change, change, change. And I felt like we had the opportunity to really change because the construction industry that we're in is really ripe for disruption, right? So for the last 50 years, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics tracks every industry. And construction has always been a laggard. It's trending at the same level of productivity now that it was in the 1950s, whereas the rest of the economy and manufacturing in particular has really doubled in productivity and efficiency. So I honestly felt like we could strategize our way to more efficiency. I felt like the perfect strategy existed for us to increase productivity and to increase efficiency. I spent hours obsessing over what that strategy would be. And as everyone at the Tweak Garrett tables knows, they've seen my drawings, my whiteboards, the different iterations of things that we attempted to come up with. And I just went back to try to capture what some of that looked like, just to give everyone a better feeling of how much this drove my life. I found 57 versions of a mission statement on our servers. Those were all drafted by me because I felt like the perfect mission statement existed for what we wanted to try to be. 38 different org charts. That doesn't include all the napkins, Kip, that were in your office, or Jody, that I sat at your desk like trying to just put down to paper. Different iterations of balanced scorecards, value statements. I literally just felt like a perfect solution existed for all of these documents. That was the mindset that I was in, that I wanted to really put us on the perfect path. We also needed a restructure. We had a really aggressive strategy, so we felt like we needed to flatten the organization and really build a culture of decision makers, because we wanted to systematize the way that we were gonna deliver construction, as opposed to somewhat of a more of a hierarchical model. And I just felt like we could structure our way out of some of the problems. It wasn't thoughts and discussions about culture and building leadership. It was really just, that was the way that, as an attorney, my mind was trained, is there's a way out of this problem. You can find it, you can solve it. And so I started thinking in terms of lines and boxes, and this is a big problem we can make our way through. But that didn't, I wasn't doing all the things that any good change leader would do, right? Getting empowerment, talking to people, getting consensus. A lot of this stuff was behind closed doors. And we found some early success. In our first year as a new executive team, we had a record year. We moved into a new building across the street, 60,000 square foot office building. We were awarded the largest project in company history. We announced plans for a new 110,000 square foot manufacturing facility, and our friends at Insight did a really great feature story on our team and probably some ambition, right? That was just the way things were going at the time. So you talk about egos, right? It's just, you know, it really was about that time when I started to see some cracks. At a time when everything should be going really well, and it started to feel like we were really getting traction as a new team, we started to see some cracks. And what I started to see was some change fatigue. Not around where we were going, but the pace around which we were trying to get there. I was pushing too hard and too fast. There were a lot of people telling me that, but I maybe was a little too stubborn to listen. There was a sense that I was prioritizing strategy over culture. I was so committed to where we were moving strategically that there were things maybe that slipped, that we didn't really understand the value proposition or the values impact that was going to have. For those of you, aware of the 4 levels of team formation, there's teams form, then there's a storming process, normalization process, and then performing, right? That's ultimately where you want teams to get, is through the first 3 stages as quickly as possible so you could perform. We had been together as teams across the company for a year and a half after we restructured, and we saw that some teams were still storming, right? They weren't finding alignment. We weren't addressing conflict quickly, effectively. Things were just sitting, and we really had to address because we weren't moving as quickly as we needed to move in order to hit some of the goals that we had achieved. And I just started feeling isolated. I felt isolated from everyone. I felt like I was taking up so much space that people weren't coming to me anymore with certain issues. And I hit a bottom. And the bottom was a day that our executive team will remember. I actually just walked out of a meeting. I was so frustrated with it. I don't even remember what the problem was. It was that small. But I felt we weren't being productive. We weren't holding ourselves accountable. And I walked out, and our COO, Hope Voigt, came and found me. And she just said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, could you believe we didn't solve that problem in this?" She said, "No, what are you doing? Your identity is getting tied up in your job. You are being poisoned by this idea that we have to be as big and as grand and as scaled as possible. What are you doing? You're going to go home upset about today's meeting. Do you think my 2 kids, Elsie and Dylan, you think Elsie and Dylan care about this meeting, this issue? This is overtaking your entire life." A lot of tears were shed that day, and I felt like I needed to jump out of it. And so I want to walk everyone through some of the things that I realized, right? Some on that day of self-realization, because I have a lot of there's a lot of struggles that I have, where I'm fairly hard on myself. You saw that I was a perfectionist, right? I think most perfectionists are fairly hard on themselves. But one of the things that I do like is that I have this constant desire to improve. So I felt like I had to figure out what was going on at that moment. This isn't what I was prepared for. This isn't what I was trained for. As I started thinking about, I was thinking back on what did I learn about leadership, right? Like when I was taught management and decision making in business school, they talk about it starts like organizationally, and then they talk about if you can lead teams, here's how you lead teams. There really wasn't anything about understanding myself. So I came across the concept of today's speech in a quote just by a famous business academic, Peter Drucker, who just says you can't really manage people until you learn to manage yourself. That it starts with self and starts with identifying how do you work, how do you unlearn management and relearn how to be human, and because power is isolating. It really changes your brain, the way that your brain is structured. And I know there's a number of CEOs in here, and I know that there are people that feel that it changes the way your brain is. There's so many problems, there's so much stress. It changes the way your brain physiologically makes you feel isolated and lacking empathy for other people and some of their issues. But the good news is that you can change your brain, right? Through neuroplasticity, you can train your brain to think differently about problems and really start relating and connecting to people again. So I started thinking about first, what was the issue? All right, and as I mentioned, as Hope pointed out, my identity was tied up in my job. I'm sure that there's a handful of you here who can relate with that. I moved back from California. I felt like I had to prove my worth. My father is somewhat legendary in the way that he grew the business, right? Him and his team grew it from a company of 50 people to over 500. Well, I had to leave my mark. I wanted to be different. There was a number of paths for Tweet Garrett. I didn't need to move back from San Francisco just to stay status quo. I took up all sorts of space. I felt like I'm a good problem solver, so I had to be involved in every problem that was being solved. I couldn't shut up in meetings, actually. And as a result of that, I started to maybe not trust others because I felt like, well, you're not solving it the way that I would solve it, so how can I trust you? And it just continued to cascade down. I wanted to control literally every outcome as we were growing. I mean, think of the fallacy of that. I wanted to control every outcome as we were growing and getting bigger, which means we were creating more outcomes. I wanted to have my fingers on the pulse of every single one of those. That's not a good recipe for success. The second one is I took on other people's tension, and this is a little bit of a different concept, but there's a lot of research and study around the idea of just transferring energy. And I would take on negative energy without knowing it. People would come into my office at the end of the day, and I was having a really good day, feeling productive, and somebody would just complain or have a concern, and just, for lack of a better term, but just for a good visual, just kind of vomit all over, right? And I'm sure some of you have experienced that. So what happens when you do that, right? You feel better. The person, you know, vomiting feels better. I can't believe I've used vomiting 3 times in a speech. They feel better, right? But you're stuck with the mess. So I'd go home at the end of the day with 98% of my day being a good day and 2% having this negative transfer of tension in me. And I started recognizing that I wasn't being as good of a father as I could be. I wasn't being as good of a husband as I could be. All because I let this person kind of leave a mess for me. I took ownership of the problem because he transferred the energy to me. I wasn't even feeling it and recognizing it. It was manifesting itself physically. I was getting like stomach aches and anxiety, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And I'm guessing I'm not alone in that feeling. Lastly, it was the joy. I loved my job. I love my job today, but I wasn't finding joy leading the company. And I'm not sure how I actually expected other people to feel joy if I wasn't feeling joy in the direction that we were going. And it was because I wasn't fixated just on what we were doing that day. I was always thinking about the future, always thinking about the past. I think if you polled our team here, they would say that, yeah, I spent most of my time 10 years from today. And people would be asking questions about tomorrow and next week and jobs that we were working on. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm thinking about 2027. I mean, how can I help you with that? So there was this big disconnect. And I was struggling to manage my attention and priorities. And then, like so many of us today, I would just escape via my phone. That was the way that I'm a workaholic, and it's right there, and I could continue to just get lost, right, in the technology. Or I used technology as an excuse, but really it just manifested some of my bad habits, magnified some of my bad habits. This is the tricky part, right? So I was telling Brian, I read this book at this time in my life, and it was on Buddhism, and I recognize that that's, again, an unusual topic to be discussing at a CEO breakfast, but there was a quote in the book that really struck me. And it says that happiness, the path to happiness, there's really two paths. The first is you just ignore your afflictions. I think a lot of us do that. It's really easy, right? You just, conflict comes, you're just like, where's the closest rug? I'm gonna sweep some stuff under there and just pretend that it doesn't exist. And the second path, and that's probably the path that I was on for a lot of my life, right? I was pretty self-confident, self-starter. If I started to see issues, I again felt like I could think or intellectualize my way out of them. But the second path is you become aware of your afflictions, and then you have the courage to overcome them. After going through this exercise of becoming aware of my afflictions, I was in no man's land, right? I had yet to really discover the courage to overcome them. And there was this long period of, which created some wake, I'm sure, within the business, where I was just really aware of all the things that were troubling me for the first time in my life, but I didn't have the recipe or the tools to really do anything about it. And this is the part that I think I would guess some people find themselves in, right? As they're on their own journey, they start to see, or they have new people in their lives, new spouses or new teammates, and as we start to share ideas, people change the way we do performance feedback and have new teams and new formats to give discussion, right? You're becoming aware of what do you do with all that stuff? Because it's really challenging. You want to lash out at the person giving you the feedback, but that person is really giving it to you because they care, which is not something that I was that really resonated with me. So I want to talk about a couple things that I really worked on that were helpful for me. Again, not a prescription, right? Not a one-size-fits-all solution, but just some things that were helpful for me. And if there's something you want to take away from that, great. If it's something you want to ask me a question about after this, that's great as well. But I really got pretty good at managing my own energy. I was aware of physical energy for the first time. I never really had this idea of, okay, if you don't get a lot of sleep, maybe you're not going to be as sharp as you were the next day. I mean, some simple things, but I didn't really understand the cause and effect. I didn't understand that there really are some foods that might be helpful or might be healthy that just I don't digest well, right? I won't feel well. So the idea of cause and effect from a physical energy perspective of really taking some time to think about after you exercise, how do you feel? Not just exercise equals feeling better, but how do I feel after I do that? How do I feel after I eat that? How do I feel after I drink 8 cups of coffee, which is a Monday? And this idea of pushing back tension, right? So the person that came into my office and wanted to vomit all over the place, that's the 4th time, how do you push it back? How do you push it back on them so that in the end, whoever owns the tension owns the problem? Why as a leader should I own someone else's problem? What dilemma can I in that moment create for them so that they feel like they have 2 paths to go, but I'm objectively detached from it and it's their decision? Because if it's their decision, then there's no tension for me. And I know that they're then going to continue to move forward on their own path and their own development because they have a tough choice to make, right? That is that's something that really helped me, just even thinking of it physically. I sometimes, when someone comes and really wants to air a grievance about something, I literally see them trying to push tension to me, and I used to just take it in, right? So I see it physically. That's helped me, and now I just push it back. That's simple. That has helped me. As a team at Tweet Garrett, we work to address conflict within 24 hours. It's in our value statement. That is not the pace at which we move to resolve conflict historically, and it has created some tension. But that's okay. Tension is okay in an organization if shifted and moved to the appropriate place. So we're battling through that, and I'm excited with the progress that our teams have made as we try to resolve where tension sits in a team, in a group, out on a job site. The idea of, we've had foreman trainings and bringing people in to figure out what is your role as a foreman, what is your role as a project manager, and sometimes it's not to solve every single problem. Sometimes it's to push attention to where it needs to be so that that person, that journeyman who's been here for 20 years, who's always been told what to do, actually has to solve the problem for himself. That to me is investing in that person more than just being told to do a task. The second one is work to be present. Learning to manage your thoughts. There's this idea that you are not your thoughts, and so I wanted to try to explain this, but I found a passage that I want to read that's actually a little bit easier to explain. Will do a better job than I could have done, because if you're not your thoughts, then who are you? Like that gets into that could be a whole nother breakfast series. Not something I'm going to solve today. But this quote that really struck me said, researchers have found that on average, our mind involuntarily wanders nearly half of our waking hours. In the vast majority of cases, these thoughts arise randomly in the mind, but they are not you. Instead, they're just events playing out in your mind as if your mind is arbitrarily flipping through TV stations. We often identify with our thoughts, believing they are true, and believing they define who we are. And that's a problem since we have thousands of random, repetitive, and compulsive thoughts throughout the day. They're random because they often come out of nowhere and for no reason. They're repetitive because we often repeat the same thoughts again and again, like a childhood memory that comes to mind thousands of times throughout life. And they're compulsive because they just keep coming. Think about it this way. Have you ever had a bad thought? Does that make you a bad person? Of course not. But when you identify your thoughts, you become their victim. So luckily for me, this idea of neuroplasticity that I talked about earlier, that you can really train your brain to get out of some of those negative thoughts, has helped me. The things that have helped me the most is meditation. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend like I'm great at meditation. I'm not. I often can't go like more than 3 breaths without thinking about what I have to pick up on the way home and where I'm going to go later. But just the idea of finding some peace for my really, I describe my mind as like somebody unleashes a bouncy ball inside like a box. That's what it feels like inside my brain. And just to give a sense of silence, I have not seen this like widespread change in myself. But our executive team read a book, and there's a passage from the book that says, the benefit for me from meditation is 1 second. There's 1 second between an impulse coming into my brain and me reacting. But that 1 second is enough for me to react the appropriate way, to take a breath, to really think about it, to have awareness as to what is happening, and I'm not just going to react on impulse, right? And that's what I was doing and have done historically, is I was just reacting emotionally, energetically to something, and I didn't have the benefit of that 1 second. The second is avoiding infinity pools. My iPhone home screen looks dramatically different than it did a couple years ago. The infinity pool being something that refreshes and that you continue to go back to, because your brain, it's unfair really. Your brain becomes addicted to the refresh. You don't even know why you're doing it at times. It just becomes your unconscious state. So all news off my phone, all social media off my phone. I'm toying with email, but that is going to be, I'm going to need some self-medication after that. But it's changed my attention and my focus dramatically. I'm much more present at work. I'm much more present when I'm in meetings, listening to people, actually, so they can feel that I'm listening, as opposed to just me being there and already starting to think about what I'm going to say next before they're even done talking. The last one is the most important, showing compassion. And that starts with the idea that everybody is unique and that everyone is of value. And if, as a leader, you don't ascribe to that, then I'm sorry to tell you that leadership is going to be fairly isolating for you. And there's an opportunity to reframe, I think, for a lot of leaders about what does your team look like? Because to me, it looks like every single person, from when you walk into a building, for who greets you, to the person sweeping the floor, everybody being aligned around the same goal, and everybody having a role in where you want to go, and everybody understanding what their role is and feeling part of it. If you can get to that place, you know, you're really doing the right things. And this is not where we are, right? I don't want to stand up here and say like, well, we figured it out in 18 months. That's all it takes. This is not the end for us. This is just the end of the beginning. And for me, the second one has been really a big shift. It's giving people space. And not just giving people space, but wishing them happiness. Our ego gets in the way of celebrating others. Do you ever see that? Somebody does really well. I could have done that. You know, somebody gets you know, a better golf score, a better report, better performance review, better bonus. I deserve that, or I could have done that. What happened to congratulations? Good for you. And I have started to see, and this isn't, again, not something that is firm, but I've started to see that by giving people the space, or that when we start to develop positive, healthy motivation, you know, our actions start to change, our behaviors start to change, and that has been really positive for me. And the last one, I think, is if you're leaving here with one thing, the last one for me is the most important. As leaders, I believe the most important thing a leader could do is plan for and bring positive reinforcement. You know, as I mentioned to you, I've read way too many books on leadership. And it's one thing to read them, it's another thing to try to experience them. But what I've seen is that there's really two ways you can try to change someone's behavior. You can act before they act, or you can try to influence them after they act, right? A lot of the statistics and research says much better results, much better success if you try to influence them immediately after they just did an action, which is a consequence, right? And there's really two types of consequences. There's negative consequences and there's positive consequences. At Tweet Garot, we are just starting to implement a lot of data-driven metrics, analytics. The way that we manage a business is different. And when we started rolling out some of these metrics, I could sense that people were nervous. They were starting to say, you just want to track my sales, or you want to track my on-time delivery, or you want to track this thing because you're just going to tell me I'm not doing a good job, right? Because that's, I think, what a lot of businesses do. They have these benchmarks and they expect their people to hit them, and if they don't, that's negative consequences to those people. They're going to lose their job, be docked in pay, have a negative performance review, whatever it is. But this idea that there's positive reinforcement, that you can use metrics to tell people that how great of a job they're doing. It doesn't matter what the baseline is, but have they improved upon the baseline? And if so, how many times have you congratulated them? How many times have you told them immediately after they did something good that that's exactly what you were looking for? Because then they'll keep doing it because of the way that you made them feel. That, to me, has been the most powerful thing that I've seen. So if there was one thing that I would say to take from today, that's been the most powerful. So as I wrap up, that kind of gets me to the present. And you know, as I think about where I was and where I am today, I recognize that what I was really passionate about, which is changing the industry and technology and really trying to disrupt the construction delivery model, I was trying to make that the purpose of Tweet Garot. And that's no one person can just dictate what the purpose of a business is. I wasn't listening. It's still my passion. You know, I still want to have Tweet Garot become a leader in digitizing the construction value stream, creating model-centric workflows, building lean manufacturing concepts into construction practices, and using data to transform the customer experience. These are all things that I want Tweet Garot to be a leader in, and I am going to, because I'm so passionate about it, try to drive it. But it needs to happen organically, and it needs to be led by the people that are doing the work, the experts. How do we create that feedback loop so that the people on the ground are actually influencing our value stream and the way that we are making decisions further upstream? I hope that I get a chance to come back to St. Norbert's and talk about the evolution of that in 5 or 10 years, because that is a journey that we're on. That's a journey that I'm really excited about. But my purpose is very different. my purpose are the people here. I am overwhelmed by the amount of trust, collaboration, personal growth, team building that's taken place at Tweet Garot over the last 15 months. I'm very, very humbled by the amount of love and support that I've gotten and that people have shown me on my journey, because it hasn't been easy. That starts with my parents, who've always supported me, continue to support me, to our president, Ray Withbrow, and our COO, Hope Voigt, who really saw me at my worst and showed me compassion. I'm forever indebted to them, and want to make them proud, and to all of our leaders for challenging me to grow as a person and to evolve as a leader. I'm better for knowing each of you. And so together we move forward with a new purpose. How do we create a culture that puts people first? How do we focus on positivity, productivity, so that everyone at Tweet Garot knows what it feels like to go home happy and proud of what they accomplished during that day? And then maybe, if we're really doing it right, maybe they're a better husband, they're a better wife, they're a better father, a better mother. Maybe they're a better friend, maybe they're a better community member. If we can accomplish that, then we've accomplished something really special. We've created this light in the world that makes people better, makes families stronger, makes communities more connected, all something that we started together across the street. This is an impact that's just so much bigger than one person sitting in their desk trying to strategize could ever do on their own. We will have built something as a group that we could have never accomplished on our own. That's my Rocky music. That's my story. Questions? So happy to take any questions. Dan?
First, Chris, as the best speaker we've ever had, and I've gone to many, many, many of these.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is, when people come to you with that tension, how do you turn that away rather than take it onto yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've struggled with that a lot. I think part of it is just being aware of how you react to it, right? Just getting, and sometimes, you know, I've utilized, for example, Ray, who's going to be really excited that I keep mentioning his name, to help me. How am I reacting when this happens? I have exploded in leadership team meetings, understanding why is that? What am I missing? And then getting the help of other people around you to really give you the feedback of, hey, you came across really defensive there. You didn't need to. And once you become more aware of how you react to things, then you have the ability to start seeing that it's coming at you and pushing it back. Does that make sense? One more question?
Chris, you've implemented a lot of change. You've asked a lot of your team and the rank and file. What are you doing to measure the impact of how it's being consumed and how people are understanding it and how they're moving forward? How do you measure how that's working?
That's a great question. I was not familiar with the term change fatigue until I think I heard it from our executive team, but really as like a feeling, right? As this we're moving so fast. I don't know that we have the answer to that. What we've started to do, and we have the help of, and our leadership team has done a tremendous job of just laying the foundation for this, but how do you have metrics that start at the top and really cascade down? I think that tactically, that is one of the most challenging things a leadership team has to address, is how do you create something that is really visible in one or two metrics that people feel in every department. As a construction company, how do we get the accounting team and the IT team to really feel like they're being impactful and that they're part of the journey that everybody's on to really really change the way that we do business. That's honestly, we are working on that right now to come up with a couple of metrics where that every employee feels like they have control over it, they can influence it, impact it.
Chris, thank you for sharing your story, for helping us understand the importance of self-awareness, and for helping us feel what leadership's about. Thank you very much. Let's give Chris a round of applause. If you'd like a copy of today's presentation, find Amy Sorensen right back here in the center. She'll get you a copy right away. Please join us for our next CEO breakfast on April 4th, right here on campus. Mike Devereaux, CEO of Nature's Way, will speak on transforming business in the digital age, figuring out the last mile. We hope to see you here on April 4th, and I promise it'll be warmer than it is today. Please enjoy your day, and thank you for coming.